I'm Kimberly Grieger of the 9/11 Tribute Museum, September 11th Families Association, and I'm with Dr. Cynthia Otto, Director of the Penn Vet Working Dog Center.
Absolutely. I responded with Pennsylvania Task Force 1, which is a FEMA Urban Search and Rescue Task Force. And we left from Philadelphia on the afternoon of September 11th and arrived at the Javits Center about 11:30 on the night of September 11th. And I spent about 10 days there. And my job was to make sure that the dogs were working safely and effectively.
Did you find that the dogs were well taken care of, in good shape?
I think that everyone was very much attentive to the dogs, but we also had the challenge of the need to really work hard and find people that might still be surviving. And so as a veterinarian, my job was to kind of slow things down a little bit and make sure that the dogs took the breaks that they needed so that they could work more effectively and safely. And I think that, that was a challenge that we all faced.
Yeah. Certainly the dogs and the people had never seen anything like that. How did they cope? Did they seem okay?
It was a great question. Yeah, it was way beyond anything imaginable. And just even the intensity and the duration of the searches, the whole environment, the level of chaos and noise and smoke was beyond anything that we had ever trained for. It was pretty incredible how well the dogs did. They certainly, like the people, were exhausted by the end, but I think that we were attentive and we wanted to make sure that they did have the breaks, and the handlers were very meticulous in evaluating the dogs, making sure that any kind of cuts or scrapes or any kind of issues were there. The veterinary community came out in force and established a station to make sure that they were able to provide any kind of medical care for the dogs, whether it was preventive care or addressing any issues that arose at the time. So it really was a community effort, and the dogs did remarkably well. I think a lot of people ask about the behavior of the dogs, if they were depressed or issues with sort of the way we felt about the situation, and what our experience was that the dogs weren't what we would consider emotionally depressed. I think that they were frustrated because their job is to find people, and some of them were there to find remains. And when they weren't finding the live people, they weren't getting their reward. So it was kind of like going to the casino and playing the slot machine for a really long time and not getting anything. And so the handlers and some of the other first responders simulated some practice games for the dogs so that they could actually have a chance to earn a reward and remember that this is a really fun game that they like to play. And I think that worked out well. Medically, the dogs did incredibly well. We did a study and we published that about the impact that the response had. The biggest problem they had were cuts and scrapes. Very few of the dogs had respiratory problems, which was surprising to us. And then long term, we followed the dogs for the rest of their lives. And we're expecting to see some long-term adverse effects, both physically and behaviorally. And these dogs were incredibly resilient. And really, our biggest conclusion was that they lived a long and happy life, and I think they were, successful and effective and a wonderful gift to the community and also to their handlers.
Definitely. Well, that's good to know. I read about this study. I was quite surprised how well they did. I was glad, of course. How did the study that you did with the health of the dogs long term and your work at the site, how did that lead to the Penn Vet Working Dog Center?
Yeah, absolutely. The work at the site and knowing these dogs and knowing the impact of these dogs was the inspiration for the Penn Vet Working Dog Center. And it wasn't long after the 9/11 response that we started talking about the need to have a center for research and training and knowledge and wellness of these dogs, and to increase their success and make sure that they were doing things in the best and safest way. And so that conversation started in 2002, and finally in 2012, we were able to identify enough funding and a location to launch a very nascent program with 7 puppies and a very small space. And since then, we've grown incredibly. We've had 131 dogs in the program so far. We've graduated over 100 dogs with a 94% success rate in the detection world. Not only search and rescue, half of our dogs approximately are in search and rescue, but also in law enforcement and other detection fields, including medical detection. We like to think of this place as the legacy of 9/11. We opened on September 11th of 2012. All of the dogs in our program that have been donated by breeders are named after the dogs that worked at 9/11 or participated in our study. And then we also have a group of dogs that were given to us from the TSA breeding program, which was shut down in 2014. And we got some of their breeding females. And any dog from the TSA lines has been named after a victim of 9/11. And so we really carry our tribute to 9/11 very, very close to our heart.
The naming of the dogs after victims is actually how I found out about your center. Is your center unique in the world? I mean, I've never heard of anything like this. Are there other places like the Penn Vet Working Center?
We don't think there's any place quite like us. we're a little bit unique in a lot of different ways. There are other groups that do parts of what we do, but the way we bring it all together, the way we have sort of the research in the community and the involvement with bringing in the puppies at 8 weeks, having them foster with families, but come to work 5 days a week, and allowing the dogs to choose their own careers. So as we watch these dogs evolve and kind of tell us what they love to do and what they do well, it allows us to kind of target them to any number of detection careers, whereas many of the programs are very, very single purpose. So they're really looking at dogs for one purpose or another, whether they're just looking at explosive detection dogs or they're just looking at guide dogs. A lot of the programs are more restrictive. But I think the freedom to really let the dogs express themselves and be successful is one of the things that we're very proud of.
I love that. Do you think that's why you have a 94% success rate?
I think our success rate is definitely related to allowing the dog to choose their own career. But I do also think that the fact that we are raising these dogs using positive reinforcement, that we are starting when they're 8 weeks old. I mean, the things that these puppies can do at 8 weeks and have so much fun doing it. I think it really, I like to say, it hardwires them to be search dogs. And so whatever career they're in, it's like searching is so rewarding for them. They just love it.
Oh, that's so nice to hear. I've always hoped that's how they felt, but I didn't know for sure. One thing I've heard that you do that really intrigues me, I heard you're teaching dogs to sniff out COVID-19. How on earth does that work?
Yeah, so part of our career possibilities is what we would call our medical detection or research career plan. And so we have worked with teaching dogs how to sniff out ovarian cancer, bacterial infections. We're actually also working with a disease of deer that is a real severe impact, particularly here in Pennsylvania, but around the country. That's called chronic wasting disease. But COVID is obviously a very timely condition. And so we know that diseases change the odor of a person's body. And so we started off by asking the question, is there a unique disease associated with a COVID-19 infection? And so we took patients that tested positive for SARS-CoV-2 and took samples. Our colleagues, both at the Hospital of the University of Pennsylvania and Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, they were able to collect samples of urine and saliva from patients that tested positive and also those that tested negative. And we tested the question, can dogs detect a difference between these samples? And it turns out, yes, they can. And so in the end, it's almost, I mean, it's not terribly surprising because we know that other diseases do also have a unique odor. And many of our colleagues around the world were also working, in this field, and we're hearing, yeah, it's looking pretty promising. And indeed, the dogs that we trained were also able to do this. What we've done since then, though, I think is really exciting and unique in that we have engaged the community to participate in our research. We have asked people who are at home and are being tested for COVID-19 to contact us, and we send them a t-shirt to wear, and they wear that t-shirt, sleep in it overnight, and then ship it back to us. And so we have several hundred participants, probably about 400 who have tested negative, and 130 that have tested positive. And those t-shirts collect the odor from the person, and we have been successfully training the dogs to identify the odor associated with the shirts. We think that this is particularly important because these are people who aren't in the hospital. They're people who would be out in the community, and the odor that they kind of sort of the cloud that they walk in, if we think about the image of Peanuts and Pigpen, I mean, we all have this odor cloud that we walk in, but we would imagine that the dogs might be able to pick up that odor. Obviously, now we're working with samples, we're working in the lab, but our hope is that we can determine if it's feasible, if it's actually scientifically viable to have the dogs screening people in various environments. And so that's something that we're looking into.
It's so fascinating. Now, there's so many people out there who love dogs and know vaguely that there are working dogs who do incredible things. What should those people, and the people like me, what should we know about your work so you can do what you do? What do you need from us?
So what we need most is support. We are a nonprofit. We run, entirely on either our grants or our donations. And so it really is a program that relies on the community. Even though we're at the University of Pennsylvania, we are basically independent in our fundraising needs. And so we do need to get as much money as we can to keep the doors open, and we would love to expand our program. We feel like there's such an impact and so many people that can participate. But it's not just money. If you're in the Philadelphia area, we're always looking for fosters for our puppies. We're looking for volunteers once COVID has sort of relaxed some of the rules, that they can come in and work with us and work with our dogs. People have been able to help us remotely if they have special talents that we can sort of implement, ideas and even things in marketing, different aspects of how we can continue to promote and grow our program is really, really important and valuable. We have breeders that donate dogs, and so they have to meet very strict criteria, but that's also something that we do have.
How much does it cost to train a dog start to finish?
It's a great question, and it's hard to put an exact number. We estimate somewhere between $36,000 and $40,000, and the dogs are with us for about a year in general. And we do sell our dogs at the end of our training program to different agencies, to police departments, to search and rescue organizations, but we sell them for a fraction of what it costs us. Really, what we're trying to do here is we're not a dog producing entity. We are a research and teaching and education facility, and we learn as the dogs learn. We gather data. We hope to develop, ways that other organizations can be more efficient, more effective, and have healthier and better dogs. And so part of our product is the knowledge that we're gaining, but in the end, it still costs us a lot to raise and train these incredible dogs.
Yeah. Is there a shortage of trained dogs?
Absolutely, absolutely. We know in this country there is a severe shortage of dogs, and part of the problem is that the military, TSA, a lot of the government agencies, and a lot of our law enforcement have relied on dogs from overseas. We'd always talked about the hazards of relying on external resources for providing these dogs, and COVID kind of made it all very clear that when things shut down, it's really hard to travel and to get those dogs. And we have been advocating for several years now to build a domestic breeding cooperative, and I think there's some pretty exciting movement in that area, where we're looking at domestically raising and training these dogs, taking advantage of the knowledge and the skill in this country, the resources that we have, and really having these dogs come from the local areas, but meeting the criteria and sort of taking advantage of some of the research we've been doing of how to get these dogs to be incredibly successful at what they do.
Mhm. What breeds, I mean, can any dog become a detection dog? I mean, I know German Shepherds, Dutch Shepherds, Malinois are great, but what breeds would surprise us?
Well, we have relied heavily on some of the more traditional breeds and the Labradors. That they're kind of our mainstay, but we have had a number of less common breeds. And so one of our COVID detection dogs is a small Munsterlander, which is a bird dog, and incredible nose on that dog. So that's definitely something. We have a Doberman who will be graduating from our program in the next couple of months as a detection dog. We've had a couple of other breeds, and we're actually going to be welcoming our first Lagato Romanolia. I think I've got that right. But they're Italian truffle hunting dogs, and so we're going to see how they do in our program. I think that what we know is that a lot of dogs can do this. We actually, in addition to our program, we have what we call our citizen science program, where we invite privately owned dogs to participate in some of our studies. And so we have a Corgi, we have a couple of mixed breeds, we have a couple of various dogs. A Dachshund, I think, has been part of it. And we know with some of the competitive nose work, the canine nose work, and other detection sort of competitions, almost any breed of dog can do it. But what we're looking for is that combination of persistence and personality, and depending on the type of detection work, some detection work is more precise. So particularly our medical detection, they really have to discriminate between samples and say, yes, this person has that very subtle odor and this person does not. Whereas in our search and rescue, they're looking for a big odor in a big space, and they're very independently working. And I tend to think of our search and rescue dogs as a little bit of our louder dogs, and our medical detection are a little bit more of sort of the scientist or detail oriented. They prefer to be kind of in that quiet lab space, working there and sort of sorting out the details.
Mm-hmm. It's so fascinating. What haven't I asked that you want people to know?
About my foster dog.
Yeah.
So I have a foster dog out of our last litter, and her name is Bach, and she's named after Lieutenant Commander Ronald J. Bach. And she, as my husband likes to call her, she's a Bach star. So she's really great, and I just it makes me so proud to be able to participate sort of on every level in our program and watch the development and see how these dogs go out. And I will be heartbroken when she graduates, but I can't imagine being prouder.
How long do you keep a foster dog?
Well, she came to our family at 8 weeks, and because I'm seeing in the cards that she's gonna be gone by the time she's a year, because at least so far, and she's only 14 weeks now, but she's showing great promise, and we have quite a waiting list for dogs out of our program. So as soon as we release them, which they have to be at least a year before we'll send them out, she will unfortunately be leaving, but I'll be following her career for sure.
Oh, definitely. Thank you so much. This has been a great conversation.
It's wonderful. I love the museum. I love what you do and the connections, and so proud to be able to turn what was such a horrific experience into some positive. And so glad to be able to be part of that. And I do hope that the families are aware of these dogs, and know that they are remembered.
Yes, we'll do our best to see that that happens. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Take care.